presentation and you wish to project, please let us know so that we pick it now and put it in a format where it is compatible with the machine. So, Sami Gatero, you wish to project something? So you pick that. Go. Dr. Bogo, you wish to project something? You project yourself, that's good enough. Dr. Jeffwa, you wish to project? Yeah, you will also go to Dr. Jeffwa. Yeah. Can you, so that we save on time.
Okay, good afternoon once again. Nitatumia Kiswahili. Jina langu Ana Masindareda, ni mwandishi wa taarifa rasmi za Bunge kutoka idara ya taarifa rasmi za Bunge Dodoma. So, makala yangu ya utafiti inasoma exploration of how Kiswahili is a catalyst for good governance, insight or case study from Tanzanian Parliament. So nitaongelea machache kwa sababu mambo mengi kuhusiana na maana ya lugha, mchango wa lugha kwenye utawala bora yameshaongelewa. So I will skip. Nitasema machache kwamba one of the key factors that enhances effective communication between people, it is the use of familiar language. So it is not only about the language, it is the use of familiar language. So when people communicate through a language which they are familiar with, they become comfortable in expressing themselves. Why? Because they know the language. So one may communicate with his or her fellow and they will be comfortable in expressing. So familiar language plays a key role in enhancing and shaping political participation, transparency, and the quality of good governance or the quality of governance in any society. So I will take you through linguistic landscape of Tanzania. As I said yesterday, Tanzania is a multilingual country. We have almost 150 languages, almost. So that is a simple map showing. So we have Sukuma, Nyamwezi, and many more languages you may see there. So ijapokuwa tuna lugha nyingi kama hivyo, sisi tumebahatika kuwa na lingua franca yetu ambayo ni Kiswahili. So Kiswahili ni lugha ambayo inatuunganisha sisi wa Tanzania na inatumika kwenye nyanja zote za maisha ya Mtanzania. So ni lugha ambayo inatumika nyumbani. To us is a familiar language. Tunatumia nyumbani, ukienda sokoni kununua vitu, you may find mama mboga anaongea Kiswahili. So there are scholars who define familiar language as a language that a person recognizes and understands easily and uses it on a regular basis. So to us, Kiswahili is that language. Okay, I'll move. So I'll proceed. Say that Kiswahili acts as a bridge between the government and the governed, or the citizens. Let me take you through our parliament. I know you know the history of Tanzanian parliament, but I'll specifically talk on languages. During colonial era, the language used in the parliament was typically English. So the MPs used English to transact their daily activities, to contribute, to ask questions, and do any other parliamentary activities. But soon, after independence, in 1965, the late Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere decided to announce or to promote Kiswahili to be used in the parliament. So currently, Kiswahili is the most used language in our parliament. It is rarely to find an MP speak English, very rare. So kwa kuzingatia hivyo, nimejaribu kutoa nukuu kutoka kwenye kanuni zetu za kudumu za bunge toleo la mwaka 2023. Linasema lugha rasmi ya bunge itakuwa lazima shughuli za bunge zitaendeshwa katika lugha ya Kiswahili ama Kiingereza bila tafsiri ya lugha hizo kutolewa. Kwa kadiri itakavyowezekana, mbunge atajitahidi kutokuchanganya lugha zote mbili wakati anazungumza au anasema bungeni, isipokuwa pale tu anaponukuu. So, despite of those positive developments of Kiswahili, positive impact of Kiswahili, there is a limited empirical evidence exploring how the use of Kiswahili in Tanzanian parliament actually contributes to the practice of good governance. Therefore, this study addresses this gap by examining the extent to which Kiswahili use enhance or constrain democratic participation, transparency, and legislative accountability in Tanzanian context. So the paper or this research had two questions to address. First was how the Kiswahili parliamentary discussions contribute to the promotion of good governance, and the second one what challenges when using Kiswahili as the official language in the parliamentary discussions. So, in case of methodology, the paper employed qualitative approach together in-depth information of the real experience of MPs while using Kiswahili in their daily activities in the parliament. And the study was conducted in Dodoma. Why Dodoma? It is in Dodoma where the Parliament of Tanzania is located. So, and the data was collected mainly through document analysis or document review, where Hansard's both audio written were reviewed, and also data was triangulated through interview, which was unstructured interview. Further, the data gathered was analyzed or was subjected to thematic analysis while adhering to Brown and Clark methodology. So, on findings on how Kiswahili parliamentary discussion contributes to the promotion of good governance, we had three. First of all, Kiswahili simplifies legislative decision-making processes. Second one, it increases public engagement in the political and government matters. And the last one, Kiswahili fosters accountability and transparency. On findings on Kiswahili, how does Kiswahili simplify legislative decision-making processes? Now I'll speak in Kiswahili. Sheria zetu sisi mwanzoni zilikuwa zikitungwa kwa lugha ya Kiingereza na zikiandikwa kwa lugha ya Kiingereza. Lakini sasa tumebahatika kuwa na sheria 3 ama 4 ambazo kwa mara ya kwanza zimeandikwa kwa lugha ya Kiswahili na zimeletwa bungeni na kujadiliwa kwa lugha ya Kiswahili. So miswada ya sheria hiyo ni kama nilivyoitaja hapo: mswada wa sheria ya Tume ya Taifa ya Uchaguzi wa mwaka 2023, mswada wa sheria ya Shirika la Utangazaji wa Tanzania wa mwaka 2024 na mswada wa sheria ya uchaguzi wa rais, wa bunge na madiwani wa mwaka 2024. Kwa nini nimetaja hivi? Waheshimiwa wetu wengi ni from different linguistics, wanatokea kwenye lugha mbalimbali. Wengi wao hawajui lugha ya Kiingereza. Kwa hiyo kwa wao miswada hii kusomwa na kujadiliwa kwa Kiswahili imewapa nafasi ya kushiriki katika maamuzi na kupitisha sheria hizo kwa Kiswahili. Lakini pale ambapo ni lugha ya Kiingereza inatumika inakuwa ni changamoto, kwa sababu maneno magumu ya kisheria zaidi yanatumika. Lakini kwa sheria hizi unaona kabisa kuna waheshimiwa labda walikuwa hawachangii
lakini sasa hivi wanachangia kwa sababu the language ama lugha ambayo inatumika ni familia kwao. So kwenye kipengele cha Kiswahili increases public engagement in political and government matters. Kama nilivyosema awali kwamba Kiswahili kwetu sisi ni lugha ambayo ni lugha familia, ni lugha ya kila mtu anafahamu. Ni wachache sana ambao hawafahamu Kiswahili. Kwa hiyo kupitia mijadala ya Kiswahili ndani ya bunge imeongeza ushiriki na ushirikishwaji wa wananchi. Wananchi wanajua kinachoendelea kupitia mijadala ya kibunge. Wananchi wana nafasi ya kuchangia kupitia mitandao ya kijamii. Kwa hiyo mwananchi anaweza akachukua kipande cha maneno aliyoongea mbunge akaweka kwenye ukurasa wake wa WhatsApp ama ukurasa wake wa TikTok au mtandao wote wa kijamii na akatoa maoni yake, na sometimes kuna wabunge ama waheshimiwa wanachukua maoni yao. So kupitia mijadala ya Kiswahili tumepata nafasi hiyo. And lastly, Kiswahili ina foster accountability and transparent. Kupitia mijadala ya Kiswahili wabunge wameweza kuweka wazi mambo mbalimbali ambayo yanaendelea katika nchi. Kupitia mijadala ya Kiswahili serikali wabunge wameweza kuhoji na kutaka kujua mambo mbalimbali. Mfano nimetoa controller out mkaguzi na mdhibiti mkuu wa hesabu za serikali. So anaweza ripoti yake inaweza kasoma, wabunge wakajadili kwa uwazi na wakahoji na wakataka wawajibike. Kama kuna hela zimekuwa embezzled, watataka wale watu wawajibike. Lakini if language used in this debate could be unfamiliar language, this could be possible. Ingekuwa ni ngumu kwao wao kuwahoji na kuwataka wawe accountable. So through Kiswahili tumeona vitu kama hivyo. So findings or challenges, we have 4 challenges: grammatical inaccuracies, vernacular interferences, technical words translation problems, and poor language background. In terms of grammatical inaccuracies, Kiswahili kama Kiswahili kina sarufi yake, kina jinsi ya kukiongea, jinsi ya kutengeneza maneno kama lugha nyingine yoyote. So sentensi nyingi ambazo zinakuwa zinatengenezwa na wabunge zinakuwa na changamoto in terms of grammar. So tuone changamoto hizo. Changamoto za kwanza ni tunasema kuweka kiambishi ma kwa kuonyesha wingi. So kuna saa kiambishi ma hakitakiwi kuwepo hapa. So you may say mbunge anasema hati miliki zimetumika katika mabenki, ama swala la vita ya madawa ya kulevya limefanyika vizuri, au ninaishukuru serikali imejenga mabarabara ya lami. Dar es Salaam kuna makampuni mengi and so many. So that's the problem with our MP sentences. They try to put infixes for plural where they are not supposed to be. The second, huo ni mfano of the sentence: wagombea wote wameshatangaza wagombea mwenza wao. So why? That sentence lacks subject-verb agreement. So other problem is subject-verb agreement. Most of the sentences constructed by our representatives lacks subject-verb agreement. How? You may say that tunawaomba sana serikali wasimamie. And the problem is not only subject-verb agreement, they also personifies things. For example, government is not a person. So ukisema serikali waende, it's like serikali ni watu. Ama TARURA mna mpango gani, it's like TARURA is a person. So that is the problem with the sentences. Other sentences, most of our Hansard documents, when you read them, you find sentences like naomba kutoa hoja. When you translate, you directly translate it to English, it lacks the subject. So it will be beg to move the motion. So the word I, it was supposed ninaomba kutoa hoja. ama mheshimiwa speaker na afiki. So it is supposed to be mheshimiwa speaker ni na afiki. So most of sentences constructed by them in terms of this one, they lack subject. And if you revise our Hansard document, you may see even the Hansard ourselves, we don't know, I mean Hansard reporters, we write the same, we don't change anything. So others, they lack tense. So you may find an MP says, nimuhakikishie mheshimiwa mbunge. Now you find yourself, nimuhakikishie doesn't have tense. So it is either ninamuhakikishia, ama nitamuhakikishia, ama nilimuhakikishia. So other one it is nimondoe mheshimiwa wasiwasi. So these sentences, these are some problems with our MPs sentences. So we have the issue of vernacular interference. This, in our case, we have in terms of pronunciation of some words, and we have they use the typical words, sentences from their languages. So you may see certain MPs from Pare, and she speaks Kipare. Now she wants to emphasize on a certain matter. Now she uses her language, I mean her Kipare language to emphasize. Shei mheshimiwa speaker, Kipare tuna methali inasema ng'ombe kuramoshe ukuhunde. Now it is, for me, for a person who is not from that background, it is hard to grasp a meaning. Another one, it is from the same language. This one is from Ngogo, and he says, Mheshimiwa Speaker, Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti, kwa sisi Wagogo tuna usemi unasema mdabula ni hili mwana na kalanga galinya msemo, and so many. So this is the problem in terms of vernacular. The impact is seen in theory aspect, the aspect of pronunciation, the aspect of stress, and the aspect of sentences. So the sentences constructed, they are constructed with some words or sentences from their languages. Are we together?
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, okay, the other problem with our Kiswahili, it is technical words translation problems, and this most of MPs when they were interviewed. Okay, sorry, 1 minute. Most of MPs when they are interviewed, they say that, you know, us from engineers, I mean, they're from science field, technical fields, legal fields, it is very hard for us to use Kiswahili fluently. Why? Because we lack equivalent words from Kiswahili. So that isn't true, because I decided to take some few words from their speech, which they like to use. For example, Mheshimiwa may say bondi, Mheshimiwa serikali imeweka bondi, or Mheshimiwa tunatenda, we have a tender board, engineer, generator. So some words have the meaning in Kiswahili, ila ni wao tu, they don't want to find their meaning. So I'll skip to language background. Another challenge is that most of our MPs, or most of Tanzanians, we speak Kiswahili, yes, but the Kiswahili we speak is not that official. I may say that. Why? Because when a child is born, he or she is exposed in his or her language. Then this child, after 7 years, this child shifts from that vernacular language to Kiswahili. Then thereafter, from class 1 to class 7, this child shifts to English language, where in secondary education, the language used is English. So linguistically, this child is marginalized. So these are the Tanzanians. We know Kiswahili, but not that Kiswahili which is official. So we are in between mother tongue, Kiswahili, and English. That's why when you find an MP contribute, it is hard for him or her to speak a fluent Kiswahili. Why? Because of linguistic background. We find ourselves mixing language. I don't know if it is because of proficiency or anything. So I may conclude by saying that while Kiswahili plays a key role in promoting good governance and experience, good governance experience shows that in the world there is no country that has achieved these development goals by using a foreign language. Thus, deliberate measures must be taken to address these challenges. Thank you. Sorry, I had something to show you before leaving.
Please show us.
Escape. Escape.
Yeah, escape.
Okay.
Can you use the menu?
Hapa inaongeleaje huko? Haisikiki.
Weka hiyo. Where's the volume?
Wapi ndipo?
Menu yake iko.
Sijajua nini.
Weka hiyo volume yako. Weka hiyo.
Matumizi ya fedha nyingi kutokufanywa kwa wageni, kwa mfano machimbo ya wachimbaji wadogo, taarifa za zaidi kutokufanywa kazi, mifumo na mikopo na matumizi ya fedha za umma ya bajeti.
Hii hata isa.
Our resident engineer.
Waziri wa utawala bora kuna mtu mmoja kule kwetu
I want to play this one.
Yeah.
mambo haya yanatuhusu.
Mbona
Waziri wa utumishi hapa, waziri wa utawala bora hapa. Kuna mtu mmoja kule kwetu aliwahi kuimba.
But it is it. I like it. Kwa nini
sijui hata mbona ipika. Mwambie tu tutashare baadaye.
Okay, imekataa, tutashare baadaye. Thank you.
Are we together? Are we together? No. Are we together? Hakuna venye hiyo kitu inaweza kataa.
Tutashare baadaye.
Yeah, hakuna venye itakata. So the resident engineer is working on it. Be sure that we will have to listen to it before we leave. Yeah, we will listen to it before we leave. And then I remembered, are we together? Are you with us? Are you with us? Yeah, asante sana. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. Thoughts on how to involve the public in leadership and governance through the use of language. That video will be played. It will be played. It has to be played before we leave. We will go to the next presenter. We will work on that, and we will have to listen to it. Our next presenter is Mr. Sami Gatero, who will be presenting on language and communication challenges.
Actually, me yes, I'm good at it. I forgot to slides. So you can go to them? Yes. Can I call you?
As I welcome Sami Gatero, Sami Gakero Gashigwa is a seasoned researcher with a strong interdisciplinary background. in, among others, applied linguistics, governance, policy, and legislative discourse. With over 20 years of experience across academia and applied research, he has analyzed how language shapes political processes and decisions, public policy and legislative processes. His expertise includes examining how the dynamics of legislative debates, policy making and governance structures impact democracy. Currently a research officer at LVCT Health, SAMI designs and coordinates national research initiatives on various public and policy health issues. He has several peer-reviewed publications and has presented research at international conferences across Africa, Asia, and Europe. Sami has a keen interest in transcription practices in research, the professional world, and the legislature. He explores how the transcription practices influence policy outcomes and governance practices. Karibu sana Bwana Sami.
We are good. Laptop now. So this one is off. Hivi mashini bwana. Hiyo itafanya. Sawa. Sam, you can use this. Yes.
Presentation clicker. Move up next. Next. Okay. Aina pointer. Pointer. Okay. Let's see. Aina. Middle button. It's like a presentation mode, is it? Yes, good afternoon. My name is Sami Gakero, or Gachigua, not Gashagua. No relation. No relation politically, socially, or otherwise, ideologically. I'm going to present a paper on language and communication challenges in the county assembly Hansard and the implication for devolution, governance, and democracy. It's a heavy topic, but born out of some empirical research that we undertook together with my colleagues, Dr. Mugomohe, just raise up your hand, and Peter Muhati. We undertook this research over a long period of time. And the research, why probably we have such a heavy title, is that we undertook this research in all the 47 counties in the country. So we did have, it was a two-phase study. In the first phase, we conducted a survey in all the county assemblies, involving all the county assemblies, in which we are looking at quite a number of things revolving around parameters for comparing legislatures that has been developed by the UN and Interparliamentary Union. So we used that but modified it to suit our concern here. So we were comparing or were taking a baseline of what obtains in the county assemblies in the country. And we were looking at this in terms of infrastructure, how infrastructurally endowed the various county assemblies were at that particular point in time. We were also looking at the human resource endowment policies and practices. We were also using the parameter of budgetary sufficiency, how the audios were being stored, retrieved, and of course how after the transcription process had taken place, how these were being, and the Hansard reports were being made accessible to the public or publics for that matter. Now, So after the survey, we were able to sample 18 county assemblies where we went and undertook an in-depth qualitative data collection involving the clerks, interviewing the clerks, the Hansard editors in these 18 county assemblies, as well as having focus group discussions with the reporters. And I believe we did come to all the county assemblies in this regard. Besides that, we also interviewed people who were involved in establishing the county assemblies, the former transition authority officials who were concerned with the establishing of the county assemblies. Besides that, we also did have interviews with people, Hansard teams from the Senate, because of the connection between county assemblies and the Senate. But beyond that, we also did an analysis of Hansard reports. We intended to do 18 county assemblies, but we did not achieve that. I'll just explain that very briefly. So it's a very extensive research that we conducted, and it was funded by National Research Fund. Now, our topic aligned very closely with the theme of the conference in this year, and we have actually, we submitted 9 papers to this conference as a result. Of course, with the potential of even presenting more than the 9 papers, okay? Because our study was very, very extensive, and it took quite a long period of time in doing this. We hope probably we'll be able to present some of these papers and probably validate some of our findings. And if not, probably we'll have some discussions with you about that. Okay, let me just go directly to this particular paper. And this, we won't belabor the fact that when we talk about Hansard reports, they ensure transparency, accountability, and access to representative democracy. And the writing of Hansard reports, in writing Hansard reports, we use a model that has been described as edited verbatim, so that it is not literal verbatim, because if it were, probably those records would be inaccessible and they would not amount to official records per se, because of the dynamics, institutional dynamics. And of course, we know that transcription is not the only way of doing official records. We have many ways of doing this. Now, our central thesis in doing this paper is that the linguistic and communicative quality of Hansard reports, or if there is lack of it, has an impact on transparency, accountability, democratic governance, as well as the devolved governance, and we shall show how this is the case. So essentially, the paper was examining the linguistic and communicative challenges in Hansard reports, and it is somewhat related to a few of the papers that have been presented before, and I can see quite a lot of relations with the Tanzanian case, though the Tanzanian case is Kiswahili. What I think the relation there is that these are second languages. Kiswahili is second language in Tanzania. English is a second language in Kenya as well. So there are quite a number of similarities in this. Now, the methodology. For this particular paper, our source of data were budget debates spanning the year 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2019. We chose the budget debates because the budget debates have to be carried out in every year, isn't it? Yeah? So we just chose between 2013 to 2019, we chose the odd years so that we can focus on that. We had intended to do 18 counties, but we were not able to get all the data we needed, because most of our papers explain why this is the case, and this is the truth. Now, when we went out there, when using those parameters, and one parameter I forgot is whether there was backlog or no backlog. the county assemblies would say that they do not have backlog, and they do have the Hansard reports. But when it came to asking them to give us the Hansard reports, they were unable to give us for one reason or the other. Some of the reasons were that these were private and confidential documents, and this was coming from one of the clerks. Very interesting idea about how the approach, about Hansard is in the county assemblies. Quite a number of things and quite a bit of misunderstanding. So we ended up having 11, collecting data from 11 counties, and even then, we did not have all the Hansard reports for the years that we were asking for, particularly the formative years. They were not there, so we could not do that. So this was a limitation to some extent, because we could not do quite a bit of trends, looking at trends within one county assembly. How are the trends? Because our analysis allowed us to observe the trends as the years go by. But we were also interested in looking at the trends across the counties. That was not also possible, but that would have given us a very good indicator of the dynamics and practices of Hansard production processes in the county assembly. Now, incidentally, only 3 out of the 18 county assemblies were able to give us every piece of data that we asked for, because they have somewhat digitized their processes. And incidentally, when you look at the trends, you would be very surprised. What you would expect would be the county assemblies performing very well are not, incidentally, performing very well. Probably in one of the papers, I've been asked to do a paper on professionalization and standardization of the training of, I will explain why this is particularly the case. So if you are from any one county assembly, probably ukiniona kando, nitakuelezea vile county yenu inaendelea. Now, when we look at the quality of Hansard reports, we have to have a framework. And we chose a framework which would allow us to interrogate the aspects of Hansard, the Hansard quality, and one of which was the grammar of what was presented. The other one was diction. What kind of word choices were used in the Hansard reports? Were they reflective, or were they accurate reflection of what was going on, or were they confusing to the reader? Now, we were also interested in looking at the coherence of the Hansard reports, and we shall come to that, and we could observe in some instances where we have a whole 2 paragraphs, 1 sentence, two paragraph sentence. I'm even confused about how to talk about it. And you could read on and on and on and probably don't get exactly what was going on there. And something that I should say, part of the problem we think, looking at the analysis, we think the problem is at the editorial level. But part of the problem is also from the MCS and their use of language. But it could be, part of the problem in a third way probably could be a combination of both. So we have a paper where we have the specific challenges posed by MCAs and their use of language, which is a different paper from this one. This one only looks at the Hansard reports themselves, all right? But the other one looks at the challenges that the reporters and the editors told us they encounter in terms of language use of the MCAs and how they are problematic for them, in producing Hansard reports. Okay? But we also looked at typography. How are the Hansard reports presented? Could we actually be able to follow the Hansard reports by just looking at the typography and the various aspects of typography? And of course, punctuation was also key. So I won't go into the technical details of grammar, diction, and whatnot, but I'll just present a snapshot because, of course, you'll appreciate that this is the kind of technical document which requires quite a lot of examples which cannot be presented in such a forum. But I'll just give a snapshot of what we encountered. And we are emphasizing on the quality. If Hansard reports are not able to communicate what is intended to be communicated, how can we then hold the people who are captured as talking accountable? How does it make it transparent for us as readers? So we are looking at the issues, the challenges from a reader's point of view. From me looking at the Hansard report, can I follow through? So we, just like my Tanzanian colleague, a lot of incorrect tense usage, a lot of it was discernible in the Hansard reports. And this is just an example. I won't go into the examples because I think you can read that, but I'll just go directly to how that impacts on the Hansard reports. It disrupts reading, and of course tenses and time are connected, isn't it? Yeah. And how, if say you're holding somebody accountable, yet we are talking about an event, a chronological event that happened at one point in time, the tense presented as will occur later, it becomes difficult to hold these people accountable for that matter. Poor sentence construction, I think again my Tanzanian colleague has pointed out that, and I think my colleague from the National Assembly did point out a few of some of these things. We ended up with having fragmented structure, ambiguous meaning, and the breaks in coherence. We cannot tell what is going on because of this. And some of these problems were not too technical that we could attribute them to the MCAs. It could be just a small case of putting the proper punctuation wherever it's supposed to be, and there is coherence achieved in this. Yeah? So subject-verb agreement, my sister from Tanzania has pointed out that. We won't belabor that. And I think my colleague again did point out that. We also have other grammatical challenges, preposition use, and that is a very common problem with second language users of English. Yeah, to, from, over, under, across, and it's usually very problematic for second language users. So we had again, this affects semantic clarity and the issues of time, reporting about the events and when they did occur. Article errors, again my sister did point out that. We have lots of, because articles tell us whether it is a specific thing or it's a general thing and whatever, and that becomes a problem. Now essentially, as you can read, effective use of grammar enhances clarity, professionalism, and credibility of Hansard reports. But when we lack this, and when they keep recurring, the credibility of the document goes away, isn't it? Yeah, we assess the quality and credibility of documents by how they are able to effectively communicate to us. But if this is rampant, and it is rampant across county assemblies, what will we end up with? Very disorganized or disjointed, or lack of communication from the very institution which we are supposed to hold accountable. You see that, yeah? And these combined with other things that go on, probably corruption and so on and so forth, will undermine the institution of county assembly in the country. And we need to check this, because part of how we get our integrity is how we are able to communicate what goes on wherever we are. Okay? We also had issues of diction, poor choice of word, and we had a lot of that. I remember one case which stood out extensively, where a word, extend, was used when the actual word was supposed to be exempt. And it was used for a long stretch of discourse, and it was completely meaningless when you looked at it. All right? So we had a lot of such usages of word. Code mixing and code switching, I think that has been talked about a lot. Actually, the cases that we encountered, incidentally, let me just mention something. It so seems that what we looked at was, the language of usage. I don't know what my time is. Do I still have time? 8 minutes. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'll finish within the stipulated time. What was I saying? Code mixing and code switching. Actually, the incidences we got were actually not code switching. there were actually cases of code mixing. There's a difference when the president speaks in English and afterwards, in his speech, switches to Kiswahili. That's a case of code switching because you have moved from one language to the other for a long stretch of conversation. But when you do code mixing is where within a single word, just like in this case here, you can see this is a case of code mixing. And this was the more common case here. Now, there's somebody who talked about the coastal counties using proper Kiswahili and so on. Incidentally, the biggest culprit in code mixing and code switching was seen in coastal county assemblies. I think we need to compare notes with the person who was saying that this was the case. Our data tells us otherwise. I don't know why, but we need to compare notes on that particular issue here. Now, I also know that Professor had talked about cases of code mixing and code switching being allowed and so on and so forth. Okay, we can allow that, but I also remember, I think the Deputy Clerk also talked about, we do not make Hansard reports for local consumption. We make Hansard reports for universal consumption. We therefore have to balance that. Local consumption and international consumption. If we have to use code mixing, then we have to actually also allow for a way of different language user to actually access what we are talking about. Yeah, but it could also, again, following from what Professor talked about, it could also be an indication that our competency in one language or the use of one language is wanting, and probably it might mean that we can actually follow through some other recommendations of allowing multiple use of language in whatever manner possible. But that means more work for Hansard people, isn't it? Okay, incorrect spelling, again, very common. And this incidentally was not just to the common words that are easily confused, but we had such outrageous spellings like one here and so on. Now, and of course, this means we reduce readability and of course credibility, because if a lot of this is happening, we actually question the document that we are reading. What is it communicating? Was it prepared by somebody who knows exactly what they need to do? Is it an official document? Is it usable? And remember, when we produce Hansard, we are producing historical record. We are producing legal documents. And that brings up such kind of issues. Of course, we have mentioned this, how diction affects, poor diction affects clarity, tone, readability, and so on. And it distorts meaning and undermines Hansard professional and historical integrity. Now, let's look at coherence challenges. A lot of Hansard reports from the county assemblies are marked by rambling sentences. And it could be a reflection of following through the verbatim element of Hansard reporting literally, whereas Hansard reports are supposed to be edited verbatim. And this is where I was talking about, we have a whole 2 paragraph, one sentence taking up a whole 2 paragraphs. And in quite a number of, and we tested this, in quite a number of these rambling sentences, we actually punctuated, and with the punctuation, it actually made a lot of sense. And some of these were procedural statements, which were rambling. Okay? So if these procedural statements are rambling, it means that we can actually not really make sense of what is going on there. So again, this impacts on readability, professionalism, and legal clarity. And I think if actually citizens become very serious, county assemblies might be in trouble, a lot of trouble, because Kenyans are not for being very litigious, isn't it? Yeah, county assemblies might in future be in a lot of trouble because they are completely distorting the meaning around, and we might have quite a number of cases coming through and questioning what was actually happening in county assemblies. Now, lack of contextual clarity somebody talks about the petition yesterday, and you cannot tell what the petition was about. You see, and I think this is an oversight by the editorial team. We need to clarify that the petition is this, isn't it? And I think this is what is done by the editors, isn't it? Yeah, you need to clarify this. So we have a lot of vague communication which cannot follow through. Again, localized communication, yeah? I remember in one of them, they were talking of the Kinoti Nile. Kinoti Nile, I think it's an incident, a local incident, which needs, you know, and I think what we look, when we examine this, we think that there is lack of that appreciation that we are not developing these records for local consumption where everybody understands this. Hansard records are universal. They are supposed to be read worldwide, yeah, and understood, you know. So as much as possible, the editor's role is to give this clarity, even if when it's not there. But I don't know, probably the practitioners will tell us a little bit more about that. So of course, when we omit this, it reduces transparency and the historical value of records. I was imagining if you came and read Kinoti, perhaps we can tell Kinoti was a former police officer or something, but in a few years to come, could you tell who Kinoti is? You couldn't. Now, interesting one, inconsistent speaker attribution. One county assembly was actually putting the speaker, when the speaker is mentioned by a speaker on the floor, that is put at the beginning, bolded, and we have a colon. It seems as though it is the speaker speaking, yet it was the mention of Mr. Speaker. Very consistently, and that was performed very consistently in that Hansard report. Now, how do you capture the name of the speaker? Some, you know, a lot of inconsistency is seen within a county assembly, where you are talking about at one point Honresian, the other time Honresian nominated whatever, the other time, you know, there doesn't seem to be a consistent way of referring to members. Some are referred by their initials, others are not, and some other by their two names. And in one county assembly, the speaker and the deputy speaker was always referred by their full names for whatever reason. Okay, and in others, no, yeah? Oh, I thought I would be able to do this very quickly. Okay, let me just go through this. Financial accuracies, a lot of financial figures, and we are supposed to hold these people accountable. Just give me 2 minutes, I'll be done. So you get like 5,000 being given as an amount that is would be used to finance the digging of the boreholes for the whole county. Is it possible? Impossible. How did that come through? In other cases, you find figures, they start as one, they end up as another, and in the third and fourth instances are completely different figures. How do we hold accountable people when figures are keep changing? In some cases, they talk about an increase when it is a reduction, and so on and so forth. So this undermines financial oversight and the trust of such kind of documents. Punctuation challenges, I won't go into this, but I think this is, the challenges we saw about punctuation were solely the responsibility of the editorial team, isn't it? We cannot attribute this to the speaker at all, isn't it? And there were quite a lot of this, and part of the incoherence and quite a number of many things that were happening was a result of punctuation, misuse, and so on and so forth. Now, another interesting thing, I remember when I started off doing parliamentary discourse and analysis of parliamentary discourse and so on, I used to go to Mr. Wanyoko's office when he was at the National Assembly, and I used to pester him a lot. And when I got the Hansard reports, they were usually, you could tell, this is from the National Parliament. I think it was called Parliament at that time. Yeah, you could tell. By the way the document is organized, by the way the document looks. And this is how the institutional identity is actually projected to the outside world. What are we having here pages. Lack of pages completely. 4 county assembly, in 4 county assemblies, reports do not have pages. How do we use them as documents of reference in the first place? We are talking about inconsistent types, and in one county assembly, I think they were using font 20-something. In another, consistently so, and in another county, we have, I think it must have been font 8 or something thereabouts. In other documents, we have this fluctuating so much that, the use of margin in one of the county assemblies, they were starting here. Documents in one page, in another, all this kind of stuff are happening. And all this noted in 5 county assemblies out of 11. Remember, inconsistency or too squeezed line spacing, and you know what that means, clutter, professionalism, and so on and so forth coming through. You see? So that was happening a lot. Okay, very quickly, recommendations for improvement. I think there is need for strengthening editorial oversight, very clear guidelines on grammar, punctuation, diction, and so on. Because I've dealt with the Hansard reports from the National Assembly. They are not fully grammatical, but you can follow through very easily. And I've dealt with the 1960s, 70s, 80s to date, and you can follow the argument. But this might not be the case with the counties, many of the county assemblies. Capacity building, of course, there is need for that. And we have a whole paper talking about this capacity building business, and it is a very interesting one. Look out for it. I'm not advertising, but it is interesting. Standardization of formatting, I think this is obvious. Technology adaptation, I think this is imperative. Spell checkers and whatnot, basic. Grammarly and all that kind of stuff. Regular audits, and I think this could happen. Okay, so that is it. I just want to give special thanks to all these institutions who supported us in one way or the other. We did not go to the National Assembly because our work was not directly related to them, but we do appreciate, from my experience with Mr. Wanyoko during this days, I know the National Assembly is the mother with regard to matters Hansard, but our work did not allow us to go there. And would also want to acknowledge the fact that this work was funded by the National Research Fund. I did say something. The data was collected between 2019 and 2021. There was COVID maneno, number 1. Number 2, just like you and me know, when you are getting funding from government, at times it doesn't come through well you need it. That is why we have that delay. But our findings are still valid because Hansard are historical records. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, we can clearly see research that was done in 2019. I suppose it is still very relevant, and they are the very things we are dealing with in this conference and even going forward. And I think it is a good learning opportunity also for the practitioners of this trade. And actually, I picked one thing which I should mention, and because of what happened when Mwalimu Nyasani was presenting also, punctuation. One of the things that research noted is punctuation in the legislatures that were researched. And there's one common punctuation problem with Kenyans. Ni zile vitu tumekubaliana tu, ni kama tumeshindwa na tumeachana nazo, tuendelee tu kufanya vitu zetu. The second comma is always missing. When you have a parenthetical statement separated by a comma, you will always find the second one missing. That's a very Kenyan thing to do. So you wonder why they put the first one if the sister is dead. Bury the brother as well. And then he has mentioned something at the end about consistency. And then something came to my mind we need to think about. He was talking about there was 5 county assemblies which had consistently using inconsistent system. So I don't know whether consistent inconsistency becomes consistency. Yeah, let's think about that as we welcome our next presenter. Our next presenter is Dr. Fred Mbogo. Dr. Fred Mbogo is a senior lecturer in the Department of Creative Arts and Media at the Technical University of Kenya. His research areas are in performance for both live theatre and as well as in the area of meaning making and identity issues. He has published numerous articles in various peer-reviewed journals and public intellectual spaces. One of his latest contributions has been as a co-editor with Basil Okongo and Solomon Waliaula for the book titled Theatre Arts Education Approaches in Kenya. He is the current editor of Writing for the Arts and Humanities in Africa, an open access journal hosted by Strathmore University and the Technical University of Kenya. Mbogo is also a playwright and stage director and actor. His play, Those with Missing Marks Shall Not Graduate, produced by Privel Presents, won him the 2023 Kenyan Playwright of the Year. What a wonder to listen to a playwright, and I'm looking forward to some directing and acting. Karibu Mwalimu Mbogo.
Good afternoon. As you can see from my presentation, anyway, no, this is not mine. I'm coming to you from the Technical University of Kenya. That's where I teach in a department of Creative Arts and Media. And so I'm coming here as a person who wants to present problems to you. Okay? Just something for you to think about. I want to provoke you into perhaps thinking with me about issues. I also come from Nakuru. So I don't know if there are people from Nakuru County. Or there are. They are shy. Okay. Oh yeah, Nakuru County. I come from Shaba sometimes, and Lanet some other times. Depends on who you ask. Thank you. Yeah. So I actually have a presentation. So even if it looks blank, don't worry. I mentioned Nakuru because I want to say that because I grew up in Nakuru, and I used to walk around the court area of Nakuru because I wanted to be a lawyer one day, but in KCSE exams, I didn't do well in maths, therefore I did not become a lawyer, which is very sad for my father, who possibly wanted me to be a lawyer. But anyway, that's another matter. But I used to hang around the courts because I wanted to be a lawyer, and I had seen television programs such as Boston Legal, Ali McBeal. In Boston Legal, I love a character called Alan Shaw, who used to present cases very nicely. Oh, I also read novels like John Grisham, The Farm, The Pelican Brief, you know those ones. Or you meet lawyers in novels by Robert Ludlum. Our lecturer used to call it Lulu. So I was prepared to become a lawyer because of these things. But then when I was walking around Nakuru and I went into court, I discovered that the judge in court, to my horror, the judge was not looking at the lawyer. The judge was busy scribbling what the lawyer is saying. So the judge never looked at the lawyer. As the lawyer is speaking, the judge is writing. And then I discovered that the lawyer's job is to speak almost in staccato. Because if he spoke fast, the judge wouldn't catch up. So the lawyer's job was to say, the man went to the toilet. You know, I mean, it just takes too long. And so I asked myself, why do I want to be a lawyer if I will be speaking in staccato? You know, I was very confused. But you see, the reason why that was like that is because the judge was writing in longhand. These days I hear they are recording instruments and so on. So it's improved a little. But if you go to court, you still find lawyers working hard. I mean, judges working hard. And if you looked at the Supreme Court lawyers in action, they were still speaking in staccato, isn't it? The man stole the elections, you know? Something like that. No one said that, but I imagine that's the way it is. But you see now, my problem with that is that it makes lawyering. Do I pay? The problem is that it makes lawyering such a difficult job. It's because I think when lawyers are taught, they're taught how to make presentations, isn't it? But when they appear in court, the presentations are not what they were taught. Because now you have to speak in staccato, you know? It's like preparing for this conference for you to do your paper, but when you come here, you start saying, my, have you written my? Mother does not love you. Okay, I don't know. That's very awkward, isn't it? You see, there's a problem there in between what the presenter has prepared and what will be written, actually. First of all, even the judge doesn't look at the lawyer. They don't see the facial expression. They don't see the gestures. They don't see the paralinguistic elements of speech. That was the horror for me in that court of law. Of course, the court also smelled so many other things. Towards this, by the way, I was inspired to do a PhD around that. So I selected for fun, which was allowed where I went to school. Oh, I went to Moi University, by the way. I see Moi University in the house. And my thesis was around Vioja Mahakamani. Because I couldn't become a lawyer, I ended up writing about Vioja. It's a nice trade-off, isn't it? I mean, kukua lawyer nusu. Anyway, now I'm importing this imagination into my own other experiences. I've told you I work at Technical University of Kenya. I should tell you a personal story about this. We have had a semester that has run for 9 months. No, it's not that we are doing advanced studies, no. It's because we have had like 4 strikes. 4 strikes, you know. You can even get as a student and deliver at the end of the semester. And then you call your child semester. You know? I mean, it's the way it is. Anyway, I'm telling you this because in one of our strikes, in one of our demonstrations, we marched to Parliament with placards and vuvuzela, visa, and the police helped us, by the way. We're so grateful that they didn't throw things at us. So we showed up there, and when we showed up, 2 members of Parliament addressed us. So when they addressed us, we felt like we have won. Okay? One of the things that a member of Parliament said, which received a lot of cheers, was that my Vice Chancellor wanted you were chinga sana. And vuvuzelas were beaten, people clapped. We were so happy. So I want to know whether this parliamentarian actually lied. Did he lie at that point? Or was he saying the truth? Because we were very happy with that statement. Okay. When we were addressed by these 2 parliamentarians, we were extremely happy. By the way, we received our pay, okay? We were very rich 2 weeks after that, after the noise. So in some sense, they actually didn't lie to us, those two parliamentarians. That is, the context itself gave birth to money to us, for us, 2 weeks down the line. Now, I'm advancing this story to say, when we went back home and sat down and watched TV to see what's going on in Parliament, the people who were talking about the problems of Technical University of Kenya, they looked very somber, they looked very, they looked very genteel. They were gentrified. There were no vuvuzelas. There's no saying, Vice Chancellor, what is China? No, they were very civil. I saw last week actually, Sifuna was actually asking, the senator for Nairobi, was actually questioning the cabinet secretary for education about Technical University, by the way, about the pension scheme. The answers were so somber. It was like there was a funeral, Now, I'm just trying to say how Parliament, sometimes when they deal with our issues, they don't look very immediate. They look very archaic, very distant, very... Now, my question is, what do you do when you're recording these things? What happens in Parliament when people are carrying out debate, okay, and so on? I've run out of water in the stomach, in the mouth. So anyway, my problem is that question of what happens to truths when this happened. Were they lying to us outside Parliament? And when they come into Parliament, are they lying in a polite way? Okay. So that it looks like this is a serious paper. Let me read to you my 2 problems for you. So, are there truths that we miss when reporting or writing up the Hansard based on certain paralinguistic cues, facial expressions, gestures, body movements, guttural sounds, etc., that provide certain linguistic nuances across cultures? Also, I'm interested in, supposing we use AI, can AI teach that? Can we teach AI to learn how to learn our cues, which are of that nature? What about the second question? What about interaction? When we open that door for interaction in these new medias, is there a possibility of this interaction running away from us so that we are no longer in charge? I can give an example. Sorry for the organizers of the conference. I mean, I saw that you posted the organizers. You posted the idea on Facebook. I saw, I was very happy. I didn't put like, but I saw it. But when I saw it on Sunday, I think, and I thought, wow, serious conference. There was a video, it was 8 minutes, very nice. People looking serious. And then someone wrote a comment there. Wastage of public resources. Now, is that the interaction you want? I mean, when you ask for interaction, you will get it. You will get interaction, my friends. So these are my problems anyway. So those are my 2 problems. If you listen to those 2 stories of mine, you find the problem. That's where the paper is. But I am interested in those issues there. And I want to know whether there's a way in which, when you are involved in the writing of the Hansard, what do you consider as language? Do you consider paralinguistic elements of expression language? Or do you want to discuss them, to disabuse yourself of imagining them as serious? Already, people who have been canvassing for the use of Kiswahili wamesema wamedunishwa yani Kiswahili kutumiwa kwenye bunge ni kama yani kimedunishwa. Ukitumia Kiswahili unakaa, you know. Sasa basi, how about paralinguistic communicative elements, facial expressions, things which are important across cultures the world over? I mean, that for me is, I mean, I'm sure there are people who make certain noises. By the way, do you remember Mzee Moi? Akianza kuzungumza, ilikuwa lazima tufanya nini? Lazima Do you think he was wasting time? No, I think he was trying to establish I'm the boss, isn't it? etc. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mwalimu. Thank you so much, Hansard. Another round of applause. Yeah. At least he has brought us problems. He has not brought us solutions. He has brought us problems. Let's look for solutions. Thank you, Dr. Bob. We will go to the next presentation, and I can feel the room. There are a lot of urge to have interactions. We will shortly have a plenary where we will engage with these issues, including such problems. And the two questions. Our next presenter is Dr. Jeffwa Mweli. Dr. Jeffwa Mweli is a distinguished linguist specializing in Kiswahili and Kenyan Sign Language with over 30 years of experience in deaf culture and language. He holds a PhD in linguistics from the University of Nairobi and serves as a senior lecturer and director of the Kenya School of director of the KSL Research Project. His research focuses on Kenya Sign Language linguistics, its historical development, and the role of interpreters in higher education. Dr. Mweli has published extensively and serves on the editorial boards of academic journals. As a member of the Kenya Sign Language Committee, he has managed project training hearing individuals in basic KSL and interpretation. He was honored with the Notable Educators Award in 2016 for his contributions to deaf education. Karibu Mwalimu.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. There are three languages that are considered to be official languages of Ireland. True or false? Which are they? Swahili, English, Kenya Sign Language. How many of us know Kenya Sign Language? You only know good morning. Thank you. So I'm here today to talk about Kenyan Sign Language. And my talk or my case is about including Kenyan Sign Language in Hansard reporting. So, one of the speakers earlier said, talked about whether it's even necessary to keep on referring to Hansard because it's a colonial relic. And I believe also that we should also move away from the way that we define Hansard. And the definition that I'm going to pick is the one that talks about the official verbatim record of parliamentary debates. Because when you talk about verbatim, you're actually leaving out sign language. Because the word verbatim is coined from Latin word, verbum, which means word. So, from all the presentations I've had today, the talk was about written reports. Written reports or reports that are recorded from speech. But I've not heard anybody talk about the other side, the language that everybody knows, apparently, but ignores. And that is Kenyan Sign Language. Now, when we concentrate on verbatim, we have what we call the verbatim gap. where we exclude languages that are not spoken. Languages that are not spoken. And Kenyan Sign Language, or Sign Language in general, is one such language. Sign language, if I may say, is a visual gestural language. Visual gestural language used by the deaf for purposes of communication. Visual gestural. So if you listen to that definition, there's nothing to do with sound. Because the languages that we are talking about here, English, Kiswahili, those are languages that are based on sound. And granted, majority of the people in the world use those languages, and that is why I tend to believe we assume that everybody speaks. And that is why our reports will always focus on written and spoken language. Now, Kenya Sign Language, as you are all aware, is the official language of Parliament according to our Constitution. But because it is not officially part of the records of Parliament, then we have a big number of Kenyans who are denied access to that legislative content. Now, if such exclusion happens, then we have what we call civil disengagement, legal inequality, and underrepresentation. I think one of the biggest problems would be that since independence, the Kenyan Parliament has never had a person who is deaf as a member of Parliament. So people don't seem to think that it is important. But we are saying these records, as someone has said, they're both national and international. It doesn't matter whether we have a deaf parliamentarian or not. There is need for these records to also include Kenyan Sign Language for posterity. So we are saying in an effort of being transparent as Hansard, but also saying transparency without accessibility is exclusion. So in this case, the deaf are excluded in the recordings. Now, Article 7, 3B of the Constitution mandates the government to promote indigenous languages. Kenyan Sign Language is one such language. Article 54(1) A to D talks about the rights of persons with disability. And one of the rights is that Kenyan Sign Language is a right for persons who are deaf. And of course, Article 120, KSL, recognized KSL as an official language of Parliament. So what are we saying? That actually, inclusion is not optional. It is actually constitutional. It is by a right that the people should also be included in accessing records that are there for Hansard. And when I talk about Hansard here, I'm talking about both at the National Assembly and also in the County Assembly. The consequences of excluding Kenyan Sign Language in reporting includes it marginalizes the deaf community, and it also has legal and social consequences. By law, they are actually supposed to be represented and they're supposed to access information. So if you deny them that access, they have a right to go to court and demand for that access. So why are we talking about the deaf? And here is why. From this table, we can see this is a report of the projected deaf population in Kenya. By 2030, right now, I think we have about 2 million deaf persons. Though most of the records are not very accurate. But it's projected that by 2030, we'll have about 2.6 million. And those are a lot of people, right? Who should not be denied a right to information. By 2050, 5.3. By 2100, will be about 8.8 million Kenyans who are deaf. And we are saying they also deserve to access the records. So the deaf community basically is a growing population at risk of exclusion. Millions of deaf Kenyans are excluded from civic engagement today and mass exclusion tomorrow. So we are saying exclusion today means mass exclusion tomorrow. So we want to include them now. We don't have to wait until later, then we start talking about them. As earlier reported, the Hansard records from the presentations I've had are basically English Kiswahili. English Kiswahili. Of course, until recently, KSL was introduced in parliamentary reporting, which is a good step. But then that's KSL interpretation of parliamentary recordings is not on site. It is remote. It is a remote interpretation. Remote in the sense that the interpreters are not in parliament. The interpreters do it from KBC. And then they are superimposed on the television. And we are saying this has its own consequences because there's so many things that are left out, that are missed out from that remote interpretation. So maybe we should consider now bringing these interpreters into parliament so that they can be able to capture everything that is happening. What are the global best practices? We have global practices from different countries. For example, the UK, British Sign Language is used for major events. They also archived on Parliament Live.tv. In the US, real-time capturing, American Deaf Disability Association compliance, and so on. So we have good stories, or positive stories from different parts of the world that we can take into consideration. So some of the things that we can borrow from those best practices include live interpretation. This is real time, not remote. Streaming and archives, so that we have access beyond the parliamentary floor, so that everybody is able to access those records. On our Kenyan side, of course we say the Constitution recognizes KSL as an official language. Again, Kenya has implemented KSL interpretation, as I've said, but not on site, that is remote. In 2018, the majority leader then promised to hire KSL interpreters, something which I believe has not been done up to date. And if it has been, then those ones who are interpreting remotely, not in parliament. So the gap, the policy is there, but the implementation is lacking. So we have no official interpreters hired by Parliamentary Service Commission. KSL interpretation is done remotely, and therefore it's not integrated into the Hansard. My question would be then, are those records that emanate from interpretation on KBC part of Hansard records? Or they just disappear like that? Because they should be part of the Hansard record. The remote interpretation has the following challenges: delays in interpretations, missed non-verbal cues. Paul was just been here, he's talking about non-verbal cues which are missed out. Poor video or audio quality is there. So, what will inclusion in terms of Hansard and Kenyan Sign Language look like? One, we'll have a hybrid Hansard where we have text plus KSL video transcripts. There will be archival access. These records will be archived, and therefore they will be public records and therefore accessible. There will be live interpretation. We're talking about real-time KSL in the chambers. And I believe the challenge is there because the House do not recognize strangers. So maybe the standing orders have to be changed to allow interpreters into the House. Now we need to move away from the traditional thinking that language is just about speaking, and know that language actually is a system of arbitrary symbols that are used for communication. Now, these symbols can either be visual or audio. If you are audio, you use spoken language. If it is visual, you use gesture sign language and and written language. So when we are at that level, then we will be able to understand that we need to implement technical solutions such as video transcripts and KSL interpreters. Some challenges that may come with this, when we include KSL in Parliament, include shortage of trained interpreters for parliamentary settings, underutilization of existing interpreters, and the fact which I mentioned earlier, no FMP since independence, so there is systematic underrepresentation. We also have other challenges apart from shortage of interpreters, but we are not saying that if Parliament needs interpreters, it will not get them. They may not be many, but they are there and they are present. There is also a gap in interpreter training. Very few institutions in this country offer Kenya Sign Language training. So there is that gap, but as I said, we still have interpreters. Missing legal terminology in KSL. Sometimes I wonder when our interpreters started interpreting in Parliament, how they managed to get equivalence to some of those legal terms. Because there is no dictionary or research that has been done to enable them to benefit from the same. So there is important to have a scenario where these legal terminologies are translated for legal terminologies get equivalence in KSL. So that is something that needs to be done. Limited legal terminologies, yes. Inconsistent interpretation, which is a major barrier. Because of that limited legal access of terms, then you'll find that each interpreter now comes up with their own interpretation, which is a major barrier. There's also cultural and conceptual gaps in Kenya Sign Language, accessibility challenge in parliamentary proceedings, technological barriers, and also infrastructural barriers. How many minutes do I have? One time? Okay. So, the cost of interpreter shortage is people who are deaf and hard of hearing are denied access to full access to legislative processes. This leads to political disenfranchisement and social exclusion. It also undermines civil engagement and transparency in government. So, moving forward, there is a need to invest in interpreter training. They're saying that Parliament can train their own people in Kenya Sign Language so that they become interpreters in there. Parliament can also come with laws that can help promote Kenya Sign Language training. And I think the Kenya Sign Language Bill, which is pending in Parliament, is one such instrument because it will open up the space in terms of training.